Okay, welcome everybody. I'm sure we'll have a few more in the next couple minutes, but in the meantime, we're going to get started. Hope you all can hear me okay. Welcome. It's Tuesday, Election Tuesday. My name is Zach Olson, and I'm the project manager of new initiatives here at the Iowa Center. This is Small Business Essentials. We do it every Tuesday, so welcome back to those of you who are familiar. And for those who aren't, just a couple quick notes. We are recording today, so we can share this on our website later. If you have any questions or comments, please use the chat function and the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen. We're gonna stop every once in a while if we have questions coming in, stop to answer those. And if you have any general questions, we're gonna save a little bit of time at the end for a general Q&A. So about today's topic, that entrepreneurial drive and spirit is what makes so many of you successful with turning your big ideas into businesses, but it can also trick you into thinking the right answer when you're wondering what's next is always inevitably going to be bigger, faster, and more. More products on your shelf, more locations, more everything. And while we want everyone in our communities to expand and grow and achieve that success, that's only the right answer sometimes when you're ready for it, right? So here today to talk about understanding and owning that growth process is Mike Draper. Mike is the owner and founder of RAYGUN here in Des Moines. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike to tell you a little bit more about himself and to discuss understanding of what types of growth are best for you.
Hello, computer. It's good to see everybody represented as a small 17 next to the word participants. As somebody who has done tons and tons of public speaking, but mainly to people and mainly in humor, I still have not totally gotten used to Zoom presentations. It feels very much like I'm just staring off into space, talking to people who have me on their screen while they check their email. It reminds me of the joke, what's the most important thing to comedy? Timing. I paused because I assumed the applause was rolling in and I didn't want to interrupt myself. So anyway, here it goes. I'll give like a little bit of a primer of what RAYGUN kind of does or has been, and then people can like fire off questions if they have them for me. Oh, the screen share is disabled. Do you want to enable screen sharing? I can just run through like a...
Sorry about that. You should be good now.
Oh yeah, no problem. So people see my screen. Oh, there's a Teresa Greenfield ad, of course. Although it's on like a new song from 3 members of like Tool have released like a track. So anyway, take a look for that. This is just kind of like a quick primer. RAYGUN, if you're not familiar, has been called the greatest store in the universe by RAYGUN, which was a real honor. It's not every day that your own company sets up a fair and balanced committee to find out which is the greatest store in the universe, Mars included, and it turns out that it's your very own store. T-shirts are kind of our wheelhouse. We're based in Des Moines, and in Iowa, vowel-based humor does well. 75% vowels, 100% awesome. You can't say that about any other state except for Ohio. We can't have a single thing just for ourselves. Des Moines, hell yes. One of my personal favorites, Des Moines, let us exceed your already low expectations. When I first started the store and was at the counter more, you'd have people who were like, oh, I'm in town from Boston for a wedding. You know, Des Moines' not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's like, thanks. I live here. It's also not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Actually, just outside the middle of nowhere. If you'll notice, the middle of nowhere here is somewhere just north of Sioux Falls. Although we have a version of the same shirt for South Dakota, which puts the middle of nowhere more in like Montana, which is where the middle of nowhere actually is. Ask me about my Iowa shirt. But just when you thought all we could do was put words on shirts, we also put words on a notebook, words on a pint glass, words on a coaster, words on a bib, words on a koozie, And these are all real products. These aren't photoshopped. So when people walk around the store, we just let them know that we're not trying that hard. Our sign outside the store says, words on a sign. We have several locations, the world headquarters here in Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, Chicago, Kansas City, and we opened up Omaha this year during the pandemic. People were like, wow, you're opening the store during a pandemic? That's so good of you. And they were like, well, we signed the lease before the pandemic, so we were kind of contractually obligated to. The store at East 5th and Grand is the world headquarters. We do some of our printing here and then some printing in like a larger production facility. We are fairly vertically integrated, so we do our design on site, our printing, shipping, and then we do a lot of our own sourcing. So we have factories that we'll work specifically with for some of our shirts. Other stuff we'll just buy, stock inventory. We do our own woodworking, so all of our own displays and welding we handle in-house. We have our own wood shop. All of our paper products come from Garner Printing on the north side of Des Moines. All the glass and ceramics is done by Pyrographics in West Des Moines. The bike jerseys are made in California. Lip balm is also from Iowa. We have a blog. I don't know if anybody's heard of that. Heard of blogs. It's short for weblog. Weblog, start date 2020, election day. We also, for some reason, wrote and produced a play that Scott Sipker and Kristen Thompson put on. I'm not sure why we did that. I guess it was to show people who think that there's no money in local music that there is really no money in local theater. We have written plenty of stuff that's actually made money, though. A couple of kids' books, The Midwest, God's Gift. The store is a, I don't know, magnet for famous-ish people, especially in political season. We had everybody except Joe Biden. He was the only, well, and except Trump. So everybody else who was running for president like stopped into the store. I think Biden didn't come because he had heard that the last presidential candidate to come before was Hillary Clinton. And when she came in, we were like, oh my God, the next president's in the store. And then 8 weeks later, we were like, oh my God, that lady who famously lost to Donald Trump was in our store. This is me and Pete Buttigieg standing the exact same way. Just two Midwestern dudes who went to Ivy League colleges. We're media darlings because we'll do anything. I mean, we literally will say yes to everything. Speaking media, it doesn't matter what it is. We say yes to it. And if they want to interview us in a box, we'll do that. We have about 90-ish employees, 6 million sales. So I guess we're what you would call corporate fat cats, just waiting for the private jets at this point. Believe it or not, though, there was a time in my life when I had potential. This is me at the University of Pennsylvania. So I grew up in Des Moines. Well, I grew up outside of Des Moines in Van Meter, but I was born in a hospital just like 6 blocks from here. So, I mean, if you could like see out this window and over the hill to Lutheran Hospital, you could see where I was born. So geographically, I've not come very far in life. But I went to the University of Pennsylvania to study history. When I started at Penn, I didn't think that I would one day be selling t-shirts on the street. And when my parents sent me to Penn, they also didn't think that I would one day be selling t-shirts on the street. I was supposed to get a master's in international relations paid for by this like fellowship. And so I applied for this fellowship and was surprised when I got rejected. The committee has a guy send you the letter, and then there's the 4 people that got it. I took their names off, but they tell you the 4 people who did get the fellowship that you applied for, so you can Google them in 10 years and be like, I'm doing so much better than you, Meredith. So without a fellowship to pay for a master's degree and without motivation to continue going to school, like I hadn't taken my GREs or LSAT, so I wasn't really that fired up about continuing with education anyway. I started selling t-shirts. So not Penn State, we started selling, this is like the middle of campus at Penn, so sold right outside our house. And then when I graduated, I continued selling t-shirts, but instead of just at Penn, I would go to other college campuses, particularly busy intersections. So this is Union Square in New York, and it's exactly what it is. What it sounds like. I would stand on a street corner and sell t-shirts to people who walked by me. So you would like hold up a product, somebody is walking by, they stop, give you $10 for that t-shirt, and continue walking. This was a pretty pivotal time, and terms of like coming up with a product that you can actually sell to people on a sidewalk. The store still has like a lot of the same design and slogan lessons from those early days. But I learned like a couple of important things. One, selling stuff outside in the wintertime sucks. This was like really cold. And two, your average person is not reliable. Back then, I was working with other screen printers. They would do like bulk runs of shirts that then I would sell. And stuff was either like not done on time, not done correctly. And it was just like so frustrating to work with other people that I just thought to myself, like, you know, shit, I don't even know how to screen print, but I could probably do it better than most of the dumbasses who run screen printing shops. And it turned out I was right. I decided to just move back to Iowa and start my own screen printing shop. So drove back, moved back in with my parents. My mom luckily hadn't taken down most of my Rage Against the Machine posters, so it was like a smooth transition in my old bunk bed. A friend of mine from Van Meter, his dad had a screen printing shop, so he taught me how to screen print. And then I opened the store in the fall of 2005. So the original store is about a block from where I am now. It's where Styx is in here currently. But so this building was like brand new at the time, 1,350 square feet. It was one extremely attractive employee. So I, rang up every sale, opened the store, closed the store, unclogged the toilet. After you clog the toilet, you know who you are. Pretty much just constant work for almost no money. And you're like, wait, how much is almost no money? Well, after a year of working, by March of 2006, I was down to like $2,917. So this was a low point. And this isn't like I had no credit cards, no loans. I had been now working in the store for 6-ish months, but even before that, working for like a year and a half, and you have almost nothing to show for it. From here, it was kind of a steady march upward, but it was still another year before I hired like my first employee in 2007, expanded the store in 2008 to like 3,000 square feet, divided into custom and retail in 2009. So even in 2009, there on the Raygun side, there were only like 3.5 people working. I was 3 full-time people, me included, and 1 part-time person. But then we like steadily expanded. So Iowa City in 2010, Kansas City in 2014, moved into our new building here in Des Moines in 2016. After that, Cedar Rapids in 2016, Chicago in 2019, Omaha in 2020. So some people would consider us like an overnight success. People are like, it's wild how fast it's grown. And I'm like, well, we've been here for 15 years. And they're like, you have? I'm like, yeah, but people have really only shopped here for like 7. So yeah, I can see why it seems a little bit faster. But anyway, 2004 to the present is a long time. I mean, we're talking 5,000 days. What's the secret? Reply to your emails. Try to give somebody something tangible, not like follow your dreams. That's terrible advice. If you look at my resume for running a place like this, I had no retail experience. Like I'd never worked in a clothing store before. No design experience. I studied history undergrad. No design like training. I never took art beyond my senior year of high school. My photography class in high school was SLR cameras with a darkroom. So not really transferable skills. No screen printing knowledge. When I started this company, I had never even seen screen printing before. And I was like, I'm going to run a t-shirt company. No business experience. I had never took business classes in college. I never even took a class in college that required a calculator. No family connections. My parents aren't in the industry. My dad's an attorney. My mom's a mechanical engineer. My dad's not even the type of attorney that sets up companies, though, so he's like not particularly helpful. No industry connections. I didn't know anybody really well who had stores like this. When I was thinking of who I knew who could help me, the one friend who did screen printing was kind of like my only connection, although his dad ran like just a small part-time shop in his backyard. My first day opening the store was my first time using a cash register. So yeah, how does somebody like that, like if I applied to like my job and looked at like my resume, I would just be like, are you fucking kidding me? It's like, you're going to run the company. How does that type of person build a large retail design company? Dependability. I mean, of the 10 things you need, talent and experience, maybe 10. Dependability is 1 through 9. Replying to emails, showing up, that's the tangible. The intangible is like staying true to voice, themes, beliefs. You could add it all together and tie it into like self-control. That kind of like brings us to, I guess, the topic at hand in terms of how do you know how to like grow the company and what like next moves to make, whether you're growing for like growth's sake, whether you're doing it properly. The hardest thing is to try to maintain some sort of a connection to the core business in general. In terms of like where to jump off, the idea of how to grow a company is like so huge. Does anybody have any like questions right off the bat in terms of what they would want to hear about for how like Raygun has decided to grow, or like why cities, why products, what types of things have we done in the order we've done them in?
Got one for you.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So you talk about expanding into an industry that you're not familiar with, whether that is a wholly unfamiliar territory or something that you like, you know of, that may be adjacent to your current industry, but you want to transition. What are the first steps for finding the right resources, reaching out to people? How do you ask people for help if you don't really know what you're asking for to start with? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's tricky just because you'll often not even really understand. You can trick yourself into thinking you're like really familiar with the company just because you're like here every day. It's similarly people like when we're going to open a store in a new city and somebody is like, oh, I live in Omaha, I can like show you around and I can give you ideas for things. um, it is a tiny percentage of people who live in like a city they're in that is going to know more about their city than I will after researching it properly. Because a lot of people are like, I live here, I know everything about it. And then you'll go over and it's just, you just pretty much like see all the places they go to. It's like, here's Chipotle. Do you have one of these? And you're like, yeah, it's a national, it's in every market above 200,000. I know what a Chipotle is. And so it works like that with the store too. The most clear example for me is in, I think it was like 2012. We started looking at where, it was 2011, we started looking at where we were going to expand into. And so we viewed ourselves as like a clothing store first and foremost. So our expansion was then modeled off of other clothing stores. So Urban Outfitters was like our biggest national competition. And so then you think, well, we make t-shirts currently. Why don't we go into like other products? So we've settled on like jeans, and we had somebody who had worked in the clothing industry. And so he was the head of like our project. So we got all these like jeans made. It was like a few thousand pairs of jeans. It was like Raygun branded jeans. And they, I mean, went fine in that like we sold some, but the problem was is that we were like selling them at like a fraction of the rate that we were selling t-shirts for. So we were turning the inventory slower, which meant that most of the money we'd sunk into these jeans, we weren't going to recoup for like 18 months. Whereas like the t-shirts were turning every like 3-6 months. And so you start thinking about like, well, where exactly did we go wrong? It wasn't that people were buying like clothing from us so much as they were purchasing like slogans from us. And so instead of focusing on the like slogan, we focused on like the raw materials, which was kind of inconsequential to people. So once we had that bit of knowledge, then we were like, all right, well, now we need to just focus on anything you can put words on, essentially. So it's forget about what the actual product is. Think about what we can put words on. And the easiest thing to put words on, we'll start at the top of that list. Like jeans were a really heavy lift. It was from sizing to fabrics to rivets. You know, we weren't doing any of that. So of the 100 things you needed for a project, 90 of them were going to be new to us. Whereas taking slogans and putting them onto coasters or posters. Of the 100 things you need, we were already doing like 95 of them. We already had like the slogans, we already had the space. It was just finding the printer, figuring out the file to put it in, and ordering stuff. So you start looking for projects where you're already doing a vast majority of the work. And if it's a project where you're going to need like new staff or, you know, learn new systems, you're going to want to put like a little more time into that. But the transition from like jeans to words on stuff was this movement from, you know, clothing store is how we like previously viewed ourselves, to essentially like slogan store. And that's, you know, we view ourselves now more like a media company that happens to sell products. And that's how we set up like our day to day. That's how we set up like the people. Everything about it is about, you know, ideas and slogans more than like the products. But, you know, to get here, it was like our first like near-death economic experience. So my original title was going to be Raygun. Believe it or not, the pandemic is not the closest thing we have come to financial ruin. I don't even know if this is in the top 5. The top 3 times we've almost gone out of business are much more memorable than this year. This year is memorable for lots of reasons, but we're not on like as steep a financial precipice as if we've been. The jeans kind of like totally effed us. I mean, I paid myself probably $6 that year. That was like, whoops. All the money went back into the company just to like keep it alive. So anyway. All right, next question.
So you've talked a lot about building that identity, that very unique identity that Raygun has. And we have a question that kind of asks about that. Sometimes employees have a low tolerance for growth in doing more, especially if they don't have an ownership or profit stake once that growth succeeds. How do you manage someone who may not have that stake or doesn't necessarily align with the identity that you're creating?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in terms of, you know, stake. Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. So like, I think 2 years ago, we opened up like the ownership and Raygun to make it like a little more flexible, but I've never really found like ownership in the company was like a primary motivator for most people. It was, you know, there's people who work and there's people who don't. I don't know. Some people just like show up, kick ass, leave, and that's it. And some people will show up, complain, and say that if they had X, Y, and Z, they would kick more ass. And then you give them X, Y, and Z, and they actually want T, G, and F. So the team takes time in like a couple different ways. I mean, and also, you know, people are cyclical. You know, Raygun is this mix of like product and people, and product is like science. It's constantly improving. Like the product here gets better, the workflow gets better. Everything is like infinitely more organized than it was 15 years ago. I mean, this place is just like a colossal, well-oiled machine compared to what it was. Humans, on the other hand, are not scientific. They're like country music, in that they just, like, once one country musician has figured out the cure for heartache, heartache's not cured. Everybody goes through that. And people who are in like 18 to 24 think one way, you know, 24 to 30 another way, 30 to 30, you know, everyone's like, I'm going to work for this amount of time. And then, well, maybe I want to travel and maybe I want to switch jobs. And so a lot of times it's not necessarily the person, but also like their place in life. So you kind of have to just have this system built in where you can, you know, swap people out. There are people that we have had to, you know, like fire for a variety of reasons. There have people who were like great, but they left to do something else for any number of reasons. And it's just, that's kind of the nature of, you know, the way it is. It's, you know, it's this steady churn of like people, and some people stay on and some people don't. And it's not anything you really want to like take personally, as it's just like the flow. You know, it's, this place is a work in progress. Like the displays are never going to be finished. The product is never going to be completed. Similar to that, nobody is going to stay here forever. I'm kind of the only, nucleus inside the whole operation. And it's not necessarily just like the ownership side of it. It's just that, I, there are these like pivotal years where I was here and nobody else was. So I don't know. It's like, it's hard to answer outside of like, that's just kind of how like the people management is tough. But it's, if this shit were easy, everyone would do it. I mean, everyone's got to struggle with people management, and it's where most people get like burned out because dealing with people sucks in most capacities.
To kind of stay on that topic, nice last sentence there for transition. We have a question. It seems you started booming after adding employees. Was that due to growing word of mouth or marketing? Did you hire your first several employees to help you with your managerial tasks or to give you a break from everything?
Yeah, so in terms of adding employees, we still do, we kind of add them the same way in that tasks that I am taking on should be tasks that like we haven't done before. So anything where there's kind of a lot of gray area and a lot of decisions that need to be made, it's easier if me or another manager handles those tasks because they're essentially entrusted with being able to make decisions kind of on the fly, go into a new area and kind of like chart our course. So anybody who's like senior level will be doing the new projects. And then anything that we have essentially codified, like custom screen printing or just screen printing in general, it's like, it goes from design to screen to printing on shirt to putting out in the store. Once I'm selling enough to be able to like afford another employee, those are the tasks that will go to another employee because you can say, here's the design, print these 100 shirts. That'll take like an hour, tag these shirts, put the shirts out on the store floor. There's like a list of things for them to do. And then while they're knocking out those like day-to-day tasks, I can be kind of working on, something else, whether it's like sales or like company growth. And so that's kind of the, what in terms of, how to split up, people's time. I mean, it started to grow faster once we were adding employees, but it wasn't, I mean, it's kind of this, you just, it's one foot in front of the other. You can't go out and add 20 people when you only need 2 just because your payroll cost is going to like swamp your money coming in. I mean, even at like a, $6 million company, if we're selling below $16,000 a day, we're losing money. So we could sell $450,000 worth of stuff in a month, and we just lost $50,000 that month. So it's never going to be, you're not just like sitting on like cruise control, and this thing is like an ATM that like kicks out money. It's still this kind of like mysterious. I'm like, when does this fucking thing make money? So there's always going to be a little bit of an element. You're always, kind of like moving a little in terms of balancing payroll costs and sales.
So you talk about how you should be in charge of taking the forward-thinking stuff, the gray area stuff, but inevitably, if your business started with you, everything is going to be a new thing at some point, right? So
Yeah.
when you're moving from that first transition of it's me and my idea and I hold it tight to protect it, what do you consider during that first transition step to I'm bringing new people on and I have to trust them and they're going to bring ideas too?
Yeah, I mean, one thing to keep in mind is that you're probably not as awesome at your job as you think you are. Like most people, when you look at screen printing, the person that's doing the screen printing always thinks their mistake rate is lower than what it is, like me included. So some people will be holding new employees to this standard that the owner's not even meeting. So, take one step back and realize, if you want this to be an extremely pure art project, don't sell it, don't show it to anybody, do it yourself. I mean, this isn't an art project, this is like a business. And part of the business and part of the project is how the customers and the employees interact with the project. So it's never been 100% controlled by me. in the sense that I was always working for the customer. So you're, even when it's just you, you're already like answering to the market. It's like when you would, you know, review a band's album and they would be like, yeah, we're just making the music for us. It's like, you are? Because your entire second album sounds like the one hit track from your first album. So it makes me think that at a certain point, you're taking the customer into account when you're making your music. So it's it's also keeping in mind who is going to work well as like a team. It can't be just this like one-to-one. You know, you don't want to make it not to sound like a socialist utopia, but you know, we're all in this together. If somebody's not showing up to work, it just means that you're paying somebody to not be here and not paying somebody to do that other person's job who's not showing up. So it's trying to find people that work well together. I think in the beginning, you know, the mistake everybody makes is they like hire people to work here who they would like want to hang out with during the day. And sometimes your friends make good employees, sometimes they don't. Instead of saying, well, it's dependability above all else. It doesn't have to be somebody that looks like me. It doesn't even have to be somebody that I get along with that well. We don't have like socials at the store. I don't expect people to be friends. I don't hang out with anybody at the store. I just like the other day, you know, one of the other directors who's been here the longest has like 2 kids. And somebody was like, do your kids get along with their kids? And I'm like, they've never met. It's like, I don't even know where he lives. I don't take much of an interest, just in that I want this place to be the project that like we all work on, and then that's it. And so it's realizing that it's like dependability uh, ahead of familiarity. And sometimes hiring somebody that you're less familiar with is almost better, in that it kind of like keeps everybody siloed into like these business relationships more than like a social side of it.
And can help avoid echo chambers, right? If you're only talking to
Yeah,
the
I
people
mean,
you already
it's
know you agree with.
yeah, I mean, from the creative side, you know, you want to build a diverse workforce, not for the sake of building a diverse workforce, but I mean, you know, the like 90s humor from a 38-year-old, that box has been like pretty thoroughly checked by me. So I don't need a whole bunch of other 38-year-olds who grew up in small town Iowa and listen to like Slipknot. It's just, then it's me talking to myself. So you want like a mix of people there. So yeah, for any number of reasons, I think it's effective, and it also kind of keeps everybody focused that it's, you know, the task at hand, not, you know, the individuals.
Do you have any, so we talked a lot about your expansion. Some say rapid, you say right on time. Do you have any fear or reservations on taking the leap on opening a new brick and mortar? How'd you deal with those fears to know you're on the right path?
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's always going to be like a balance, you know, inside. Like every entrepreneur is somebody who's essentially like unemployable for any number of reasons. Like if I got along well with other people, I'd probably get a regular job that paid me more than this. But it's, and within that, there's this anything can be done, you know, positive thinking, which, you know, doesn't really properly take risk into account. I mean, if you ran the statistics on, you know, running a business like this, the, you know, odds are so stacked against you that if you were the type of person that properly assessed risk, you would probably not do this. So on the one hand, there's this like thoughtlessness that goes into expansion, and there has to be some form of thoughtlessness that goes into expansion. On the other hand, you know, I'm, you know, personally responsible for a shitload of debt. So it's, yeah, obviously, you know, frightening in any number of ways. It never, running out of money like never is like fun. There's like no way around it. So you're never going to get to a point where you're kind of like, oh, the anxiety of running the company has like ended. I mean, it can be more nerve wracking now than it was 10 years ago, because we can run out of money so much faster, and the numbers are so huge. I mean, when it's hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, I mean, you're like, all of my personal assets would be gone in like 3 weeks worth of Raygun bills. It's just, so it's not like a one-man operation. You can make up the $8,000 shortfall on like a credit card kind of thing. So yeah, that kind of stuff like never goes away. And it's part of like the balance of running the company. There's like pros and cons to it. One of the cons is being, you know, personally on the hook for all this money. And, you know, that's why for some people, I mean, with the pandemic, there will be some people who, you know, financially can't make it because of just like the circumstances around how things have changed. But there will be other people that like throw in the towel because it's like not worth the stress. You know, you're the thing you get out of running the company more than money is like the joy of running the company and the joy of having this project. And if that's being overwhelmed by the stress of the company, then it doesn't, you know, make sense to like run it anymore. So I think a lot of small companies will go out this year, not just for economic reasons, but just the, you know, exhaustion of running a place like this.
So you've talked a lot about time frames and turning shirts and all that, and obviously you've honed that over years of understanding it. But for example, when you got into it, you didn't have any of that knowledge, right? You didn't have any idea of how to run a t-shirt business. So how do you get better at analyzing your markets?
I mean, it's mainly
learn
just
that?
trial. It's just kind of still trial and error. And one of the reasons why, you know, my office is still in the store is that it really does stem from, you know, what can you hold up and sell to a stranger on the sidewalk? Of it is product first. Like, you know, whenever we have talked complex marketing plans and all that, we have always ended up in the same place, which is like we should put more money into better products. It's like we need more money in ideas, more money in like people to bring those ideas to fruition. It is just finding stuff to sell to people. And it's not just, you know, like one idea, it's quantity. I mean, we just overwhelm other places in terms of the number of things that we crank out. It is all pop art. You know, you can design our stuff in like Microsoft Word if you wanted to. So it's not like you're pushing the boundaries of like graphic design in any capacity. It's meant to be simple. But in that sense, you know, it's like once you learn a power chord on a guitar, you can play a whole Blink 182 album in like 4 days. That doesn't mean you're actually Blink 182 because there's a lot more than just um, the nuts and bolts of the music or even the songwriting. There's like the touring and the aura and all everything about it. So you know, the store is popular because it's like simple and lots of people have, you know, funny ideas for things and lots of people have great ideas for things. You know, we have to just do several a day forever. You know, it's like, all right, well, those 3 ideas are funny. Now give me 4 ideas a day every day for the next decade. um, so it's trial and error, but still gets back to, you know, the original. Like it has to be something that people want to purchase first and foremost. Um, and it's just kind of like a what have you done for me lately kind of thing.
What sort of market research did you do before launching the jeans?
Oh,
Was there any, and what sort of just as importantly, what sort of follow-up analysis or research did you do afterwards to learn from that lesson?
yeah, I mean, I guess there wasn't much research outside of seeing that other people made jeans. We sold some jeans in the store. And then the follow-up research was like, oh shit, we're running out of money. Why is that? And then you really started diving into, you know, inventory and inventory turn, which wasn't something that we really thought about that much since, I mean, again, it's if you went and redid the whole thing, we didn't have the data to compare because our main thing turned at, you know, say it was like 3 times. And we didn't have any other products that were turning slower because we only really had one main product. So we didn't have anything to compare it to until we had the jeans. And so it's one of those things of you're like, if you're going to do it all over again, you know, would you still do that? It's like, I don't know what to say because doing it gave us now the information that we had to compare of being like, all right, well, non-slogan products turn at this rate and slogan products turn at this rate. Now we can do, you know, another product that's slogan and then see how that turns. And as you then put those pieces in, you can actually make more educated guesses. But for us, you know, we were only diving into it with the information that we had at hand. And there was just, you're only making decisions. You take like the information available to you and make the best possible decision. The mystery is how is it going to do once it hits the market, which can only be answered by bringing a product to market and then assessing it. And then you just hope that, it's, if it fails, that its failure doesn't like swamp your boat, that you can like, change course after that. And then since that time, again, it's mainly looking for markets which are like just driven by product. So when you look at, well, what cities do you want to open up a store in? Let's just say Omaha or San Diego. Well, Omaha's only 2 hours away. So just the nuts and bolts, it's a lot easier to get there, a lot easier to find a store. Omaha is also right across the river from Iowa. We already have a lot of Iowa stuff. So it's just everything's pointed in the right direction, and that you can set up a store in a new market nearby. Logistically, it's simple to get to. Content-wise, you've already got content that's going to sell in that store. Plus, you can make some more content. It's kind of like a no-brainer. So you want to just look at where you have like the most advantages, like what you do well, and where you can apply that to other things, which is also something you have to like relearn. You sometimes will want to be the thing that you don't like. You'll often overlook like your own strengths and just focus on what you don't do well at, rather than saying like, well, here's the 3 things I do really well. I should just apply these to everything, instead of I should find things that having those 3 talents puts me in an advantage, not trying to cram these 3 things into like something else. So, we obviously do, quick humor better than most other places. It would be fun in some capacity to be like a serious store and deal with like heavy issue. I mean, just the design. I mean, there's lots of things that it's like, it would be neat to be good at that. I'm trying to think of if there's like another store off the top of my head. Patagonia is one that's like cool brand, but just a lot more serious, like higher end, that kind of thing. And it's just like my talent set is like not compatible with that. So it's, instead of trying to like cram myself into it, it's like, well, I find things that I can succeed at because of like my like talent set.
So know what you do well and then build off of that and build out from that rather than just leaning on it, right?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the number of things that I'm not good at is like extensive. I mean, I never used a calculator in college, not because I wanted to, but just because I was so bad at math and science that the only subject I really did well in was history. So in order to get like a 4.0, I just took nothing but history classes. It's like, well, instead of trying to like branch out. And so, my talent pool is like mainly like 4 inches deep. And then you hit like humor and slogans, and it's like a well. So as long as I'm like swimming back and forth in this little area, people are like, oh, that guy must be a genius. But if you stuck me in any other field, from quantum physics to mechanical engineering to restaurants, it would be like, who is this dummy working here? And how did they get hired? It's like, oh, I'm really only good at this one little area. And so as long as I don't leave that field, people will like chalk it up to like genius. But as soon as I like wander out of my lane, I'm surprisingly mediocre.
I think a lot of us can say that about ourselves.
Yeah.
What's your biggest obstacle in expanding out of state? You obviously talked about potential cultural issues. Maybe they don't have the same sense of humor.
Yeah, I don't know if
But there's a lot of different things to consider, right?
I mean, it's really just the pace that we're going at. It's really just the balance of, financing and expenditures. So there's no real like obstacles outside of just like cash management. I mean, at this point, in terms of what we do in our like demographic, we do pretty much better than anybody else who's in our same field, just kind of across the board. So we've built out the like machine to succeed. It's just you get to a certain point where in order to reach that next level, it's not just bringing in one more person, but it's like, well, now we're gonna have to like bring in 3 new people, and then to add 2 new stores a year, but to also maintain existing stores. So we're kind of reaching this next point where we would need like financing beyond what we've done in the past for any number of reasons. So you're sometimes not growing like steadily upward. You're like kind of growing, then you hop up, and then you grow some more, and then hop up and grow some more. And at each one of those points where you're jumping upward, you're kind of just like swinging from rung to rung. So you kind of have to let go of one and grab the other one. So we're, getting closer to one of those points, and that we're, have passed being like a $5 million company on the way to like a $10 million company. And so at a certain point, we'll just have to get even more serious about, not serious about financing, but like financing in an even like bigger way than what we did before. So you can add more people and essentially like take slightly more risk for like more payoff. But so I don't know. It just like, it's all cash flow management. I mean, it's like at the end of the day, I mean, that'll be the one thing that I do not miss at all about running a company is just like the constant, like money in, money out, like who owes us money, who we owe money to, how much money came in this month, how much is going out. I keep, a spreadsheet that just goes through, it just summarizes like each month that it's like starting balance and ending balance. And you have that over the last like 8 years. And that's kind of like all I look at, like net profit, like to assets, we can iron that out with, the accountant and the bookkeeper, but it's, it's just all cash in, cash out.
Reading through the rest of our questions here, sorry. You want to grow, but you don't want to spend the money yet. How do you know how far to stretch yourself before you snap? How do you know how far to stretch your existing employees before they snap?
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember who said it, but somebody was like, you're either growing or you're in slow motion liquidation. All your other expenses are going to keep going up. Like people are going to expect to get paid more every year. Your rent's going to go up. Our rent, CAM, and taxes have never decreased, ever. Like there hasn't been a single year where we get like a CAM summary and they're like, oh, hey, you're getting money back and we're going to reduce rent next year. Just everything goes up. So if your sales stay flat, your profits are just going to be eaten by rising expenses. So you have no choice but to grow. So when you think about it that way, it makes the decision like a little bit easier because it's either deciding to start slow motion liquidation of your company. And if that's the case, just try to keep it at neutral, or you keep growing. And there's no one, like this is the green light, like you've got an additional 40,000 in profit guaranteed. So you can hire a person right at $40,000 and you're not going to lose money. You're always going to get to the point where you're like, well, we've only got 20,000 in additional profit and a new person's going to require 40, but this new person should be able to take on these tasks and have a little bit of time left in their day. And this person can take on these tasks and then this person can assist to fill out that day, which will lead to more sales. And so it's this complex kind of like equation, whereas is the new person who's coming on going to lead to like more sales? And if so, what are they doing? The way we like to build out a team is any new person shouldn't be managing other people. A new person should only be taking things off the plate of existing people who will then move up. So you're not so much climbing the ladder as like the ladder is being built below you. And, even like just this month, we were talking about like hiring and who we hire and why and what kind of like budget we have. And it's, there's never a clear answer to like anything. And you're always going to be kind of like making a leap a little bit.
What is the best way to approach a business leader you don't know, but you'd like advice from?
Oh,
Starting out.
Man, I don't know. Email? There will be some people that like talk to you and some people don't. And I mean, I used to think it was just, I thought to myself like, well, maybe I'm not important enough to get an email back from this person. But there's sometimes people who don't email me back, and I'm just like, what are you possibly thinking? It seems like, doesn't everybody want to talk to me? I run like a popular company and I make t-shirts. Pretty much everybody needs free t-shirts for whatever organization they work with. So I'm usually at like the top of people's lists of like, oh yeah, I'll answer this guy's question. So I would say just like put it out there. I mean, it's like I'm in sales, so my job is to kind of like answer emails. It's not like I reply to everything, so it's not like I look through and I'm like, this person's not important enough. This, you know, I try to look back on, like my life, and it's these connections to people are insanely important. There was like an author from like who was in Des Moines who called me one time to see if I could carry their book in the store. And although they didn't remember this, when I was in high school, I applied to work at City View, and this person was actually the editor of City View who hired me to work there. They quit before I started, so we only met once when she like gave me a tour. But then when like she talked to me on the phone, I'm like, oh, you don't remember me, but you actually hired me at City View like 9 years ago when I was still in high school. And she's like, I did. We ended up like carrying her book and then publishing one of her next books. And so it's one of those, like, if you're not going to email people back just to be a nice person, if you wonder like, well, what's in it for me? I don't know. Fuck, in 20 years, that person that you're replying to may like publish one of your books for you. So if you need a what's in it for me angle to reply to emails or to answer questions, just think of it that way. That person might be able to do something for you in the future. So I would like email people, but don't take it too personally if they don't reply. I mean, there's people who don't reply to me. There's like sales reps sometimes who don't reply to us, and their whole job is just reply to people like us so they can take our money.
So let me ask in a slightly different way. You as one of those company or community leaders, when people reach out to you for advice, what gets your attention?
Oh, I'll reply to everything. So you don't really need to like write in a certain way. I mean, I'll have kids from DMAC that are like, I'm doing this school project. Could you help me with it? And they don't even sign their name, and there's a Microsoft Word document attached, and it's like, how does your company and or organization contribute to the community? And it's like, well, I mean, at least take out organization, like if I'm going to do your homework for you. So I mean, I'll fill that stuff out and send it back to them, and maybe they'll say thanks and maybe they won't, but it's not really something I spend too much time thinking about. I like, nobody has to like pitch me in a certain way. There's not like a secret code to like, oh, it's like you got to set up like, if you want your deck to be seen by these investors, it has to be like, this is how you want page one. And it's like, I just all of that stuff is like so meaningless to me. I cannot stress how little I care about any of that. I barely look at people's resumes who like apply here. Most of the time, immediate managers are in charge of like the hiring, and then if that person is dependable, they work up in the company. If they're not, they work their way out. My main interest is like, I don't know, if they went to high school in Iowa, maybe my school played football against them. Outside of that, it's just, dependability and attitude. So
What's one thing that annoys you when people reach out? What do you absolutely not want to see?
Oh, man, nothing really. I deal with the general public, so the bar for bizarre questions or stories is like so high that if somebody emails me and has like passed it, I would almost let them know that they have won the prize for the craziest shit that has ever been said to me. I don't know. I mean, it's just generally like par for the course of people are like, I'm working with a great organization. We need money for something or product or like sponsorship. I mean, most of the time people email me if they like need something. I rarely get one of those like, I like what you're doing email. I mean, it's just so, yeah, they all kind of like fall into like pretty standard categories of like what I get. So.
Okay, that's all the questions I had. If we have anybody else that wants to sneak one in right at the end, you have 20 seconds to do so. Mike, anything else that you want to, any other wisdom you want to impart?
Oh, no, I mean, that was a wide ranging discussion. I think we covered it all. We laughed, we cried, saw several people crying.
They were happy tears though.
Yeah, I mean, it's an emotional roller coaster like that. If you're not laughing and crying, you might be dead.
Well, I
Well,
don't think we have any other questions. So thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out with us today.
yeah,
Thank you so much to Mike Draper of Raygun. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. Everybody, next week, we're going to be back again on Tuesday, talking about spending with purpose, how to align your business values with your money habits. And today, please go vote if you haven't.
yeah, why
Mike,
not?
thanks so much.
The weather's nice. May as well.
It's a beautiful day. Go
Yeah.
vote.
All right. Well, see everybody later.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.